everybody. I'm Duncan Hood, and welcome to another Sea Story. And we are hosted by the American Schooner Association and the Great Chesapeake Bay Schooner Race. And we got a real treat for you all tonight. We have Gary Jobson, a man of many talents. And say hi, Gary.
Good evening, everybody. Nice to be with you tonight.
Now you're talking. Now you're talking. I'm glad you all could join us tonight. We got a lot of fun things to talk about and do. But as usual, before we get rolling down the highway, we have a little bit of housekeeping. I would like very much if you all would take a moment, type in your chat box where you're dropping in from, and that way we can see that the chat is live and going along. And here's Bruce and Gerardus, welcome back. Lynn and Chris, life is good, everybody. It looks like, oh my God, we are working and we're hot and rolling. All right. Having said that, Gary, I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight. And you've got so many accolades on your title here. I got you as a racer, tactician, producer, commentator, National Sailing Hall of Fame board member, the Annapolis Film Festival chair, but most importantly, you're also a patron at our local theater, Colonial Players.
You go to every show.
God bless you.
And I've seen you perform. You've done a great job.
It's a frightening thought.
Yeah, and very different roles that you've played too.
It's awful fun. You know what? When I get off the water, it's awfully nice to pretend to be somebody else. Well, it looks like we got some fun stuff. Now, before I get rolling, I would like to roll a very short little commercial about joining the American Schooner Association. For those of you who don't know, they're one of our sponsors, and we're always looking for more fun. So here we go. Let's get in on that and let that roll here. This is a pitch to ask you to join us at the American Schooner Association. Founded in 1972, the American Schooner Association is dedicated to the history, preservation, and promotion of the schooner rig. You don't need to be a schooner owner to join the organization, just to be interested in these beautiful boats. As time marches forward, the role that schooners played in the history of our country is fading too. Your membership helps support educational programs and provides a base for preserving these vessels. So, join us. It's inexpensive, important, and we'd love to have you along. We'll see you at amschooner.net. And that's yet another amazing production from Duncan Hood Studios, all the way up in my room. Anyway, Gary, it's great to have you along, and you've done this 100 times, and I've seen 3 of your presentations over the years, and finally got you here, dude.
All right. Well, Duncan, thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you tonight, and thank you for taking a little bit of time. I've got a whole collection of things to talk about, so I'll spend a few minutes on different topics, and I've got several videos that I'm going to show, and I'll narrate all of them live. But I'm going to start out with some stories. The first story is schooners. So I owned a Murray Peterson schooner, a 41-footer that was designed in the 1930s and finally built in 1963. Helen Jones had it built at the Camden shipyard up in Camden, Maine.
Yeah.
And I became a co-owner with Jack King, now deceased, and we kept it mostly in Maine. We did have it on the Chesapeake. We did the Great Schooner Race one year with it, and it was very
God bless
cool
you for that.
Right, it was very cool because we started in Annapolis, and there were 6 of us in the crew, all of them experienced racers but new to schooners. And it took our group a little while to figure out how to get the topsail up and the golly wobbler going. But here was the cool thing.
Yeah.
Wind was out of the northeast. It ranged from 18 to 25 knots.
Oh, thank you, God. Thank you, God.
And all the way down to Norfolk, Virginia. And we had the wind on the beam all the way down there. And the name of the boat was Silver Heels for the
Yeah. For the
waves
waves.
coming off the stern of it. And it was great fun. And my daughters that are all now in their late 30s and 40s, we have 3 daughters. They now say that their greatest summers was the time that they spent on Silver Heels
Oh,
up
yeah.
the game, cruising around. And
It's a
yeah,
wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing, Gary.
and
And
I
Silver
would
Heels had quite a
orchestrate,
reputation.
thanks, and I would orchestrate our trips of 3 to 5 weeks. Looking back, it's amazing I pulled all that off. And I have sailed over to Bermuda on the Pride of Baltimore, which is a topsail schooner. And believe it or not, the Rudy Schaefer replica of America that he built in '67 ended up being donated by the guy that owned Friendly Ice Cream to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy when I was a sailing coach there in 1976, celebrating the 200th anniversary. Hard to believe we're coming up to the 250th year in 2 years. We kind of led the parade in New York Harbor with the Schooner America, which is very cool.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a special place with schooners. We all know they don't go to windward particularly well, nor do they go straight downwind particularly well, but they sure reach nice
They reach beautifully, yeah.
and they look good.
Well,
So
I
anyway,
participated in the Gloucester race a number of times, and that race doesn't have a windward mark. We just go beam reach to beam reach, and
no, that's smart.
Yeah.
Now, I'm on the board of directors of the Tall Ships America.
Yeah.
There's a lot of these vessels have more than 2 masts, but there's a collection of schooners in there, and it's definitely worth preserving the heritage and history of these boats, and it's very cool.
Yeah, you
If
bet.
you want to have some fun, a film that I recommend is called Sail to Glory. Now, on the one hand, it's slightly hokey, 1967, but Robert Stack is the narrator, famous actor, and Doc Severinsen, who played with Johnny Carson for years and years, he does the music with his trumpet.
Yeah.
And it's the story of America, and it's historically accurate. And the acting is kind of fun. Anyway, Sail to Glory. It's one of these 45-minute films, and I would put it in the it's fun to watch category.
Oh, it's probably right up there with Captain Ron.
So, Duncan, we have a big year in the sport of sailing.
Yeah, tell me about it.
In 2 months' time, the Olympic Games are going on. I'm going to be covering the Olympics for NBC. The sailing part of the Olympics is in Marseille, which is about 400 miles south of Paris, where most of the events in France will take place. And the sailing competition starts on July 28th and runs through August 8th. There's 10 Olympic classes, and we will be covering every race day live. Shows come on at 8 in the morning. It'll be on one of the NBC Peacock streaming services, and you can watch the races live, morning television, or about 15 minutes after we get done, there'll be a replay, and you can watch it anytime throughout the day. And for me, it's my 10th Olympics, dating back to 1988 as a commentator. I tried to sail in the Olympics a couple times. I never made it. I sailed in the Finn in the 72 trials, and I crewed in a Flying Dutchman in the 76 trials. But my focus over the years was really more in the America's Cup, not on the Olympics. But anyway, I have been a commentator, and it's a great thing. And the thing that astounds me is just how good these sailors are.
Yeah.
And they seem to get better every 4 years. And then later in the summer, we have the America's Cup. I'll be over there in Barcelona, and American Magic is representing the New York Yacht Club. And just for the record, I hope they win. I don't know if they're going to win, but I think I sure hope to see the cup back in Newport, Rhode Island during my lifetime. I was there on the dock when Australia 2 got lifted out of the water. Hard to believe, 41 years ago that all happened. And but it's going to be a good thing. American Magic, I'm sure, will do a worthy campaign, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit tonight. And I'm going to give you a little projection of what I think is going to happen. So people ask me, I don't do as many lectures as I once did. My record was 128 speaking programs in one calendar year, 128. And I keep track of my speaking events, and I'm up to a little over 2,900 since graduating from college in 1973. And I can assure you that every single one of those talks was a practice for tonight. I try to get better and have interesting stories, and things certainly change over the years. And one of the questions I get frequently is, do you still sail? And the answer, yes, I still sail in a variety of ways. So tomorrow night, I'll be doing the Block Island race on a 66-footer. There's 3 of us over a certain age and 17 crew that are under a certain age. So I'll be in the back of the boat. I kind of joke we're the management. And this starts off Stamford, Connecticut tomorrow afternoon. I think our starts at 4 in the afternoon. Out to Block Island and back to Stamford. It's a 186-mile race. I've been sailing 12 meters a lot again for the past decade. And I'll be on a couple 12s this summer. And I'm also racing an 8 meter. The last 2 years, I've raced an 8 meter out in Nantucket. And I'll be doing that. The 8 meter race was built in 1928 and won an Olympic gold medal in 1932 in LA when the games were there. And this boat, it was skipped by a guy named Owen Churchill from Balboa Yacht Club in Newport Beach, California. And he had such a lead going into the last race that all the other boats said, screw it, you got the gold medal and we're going to go play golf today. Kind of a fun story. So that's kind of my racing. And then I do race occasionally with the Harbor 20 fleet here in Annapolis, and the new issue of Sailing World magazine that's coming out next week. I have an article on Harbor 20s here in Annapolis. Now, having said all that, I still like to go day sailing. I have a very nifty Hood 32-foot day sailor that I keep here on Spot Creek. And I'll probably get at least 25, hopefully 30 days of sailing in. And I like going out for good sails. You know, when I say a good sail, at least 3 or 4 hours. And sometimes I'll be out 6 or 7 hours. And I like to go with either 1 or 2 crew. And I find conversations are great. And, you know, I think I'm the rare racing sailor that actually likes to go out day sailing. I was going to start with 3 short stories, and then we're going to look at some videos. So the first story is kind of fun. I got invited to race in a match race regatta in New York Harbor. Now, it's kind of unusual to race sailboats in New York Harbor, all the shipping traffic and ferry boats, and it's got a lot of current.
It's crazy, yeah.
You know, 8 or 9 feet of tide, I don't know, twice a day tide. And it's a match race regatta, which is a tennis ladder type elimination. And I ended up in the final against Australia. The same crew that had won the America's Cup in 1983. Several years later, I'm actually racing them in the Liberty Cup in New York Harbor. And it's the final race, and whoever wins between the 2 of us is going to get a little bit bigger pickle dish than the other guy. Well, the course is pretty simple. We started off the ferry dock at the Statue of Liberty. I'm sure many of you have been there. Very cool day to go out there and look around and go up the statue. And we went about a mile toward the Verrazano Bridge, long downwind run to a buoy kind of off the Battery, and then back up to the finish line, which is off the ferry dock off Liberty Island.
Yeah, I've been there.
So we're on the downwind leg, and I'm about 3 boat lengths behind the Australians. And the current is ebbing out of New York Harbor at about 3 knots. And we're probably going downwind at 5 knots. So we're barely making progress down the shoreline. And then I got an idea. I'm looking over behind Liberty Island and Ellis Island. I wonder how deep the water is behind those islands. Maybe we could go behind the island to escape this rushing ebb current. So one of my crew kind of goes down below and looks at the chart, and he whispers up, at low tide, it's 5 feet back there. Well, we draw 5 feet. And the tide's going out, so it's not low tide yet. So we drove away from the Australians, got behind Liberty Island, continued on past Ellis Island. We actually had a counter current going with us and jived back out toward the leeward mark off the battery. And we were so far ahead of them, we couldn't even read the numbers and we won the race. But my story doesn't end there. A year later, we're the defending champs, invited back. The Australians, runner-up, they're invited back. And we're in the final again against these same guys that were in Australia too that won the cup. And we're going downwind. And this time they're behind us. And then, surprisingly, they jived away from us to go behind Ellis Island and Liberty Island, pulling the same trick on us that we'd pulled on them a year earlier. Now, the sad part about this story is we did not have our ESPN cameras and microphones on their boat to see the look on their faces and hear what they had to say when they got around behind the island to find out that that winter a bridge had been built from Liberty State Park over to Ellis Island. It was about 8 feet high. So by the time they came back around, we won that race too.
That's a great one.
So I love names of boats. My current boat is named Whirlwind, named in honor of L. Francis Harrishoff's J boat Whirlwind that raced in the 1930 trials, which had a great record of 1 win and 18 losses that season. But the crew never gave up, and they did win the last race of the summer season. And it defines my lifestyle. So, you know, I kind of like names of boats. And I was kind of intrigued by this young man I saw recently sailing an Optimist dinghy. And this young man is probably 10 or 11 years old. And I can tell you this kid is going some places because he named his Optimist dinghy Pessimist. And then I have a friend up in Marblehead who bought a J70 and he's been racing it. And he named his boat Africa. His name's Judd. Judd, Africa. Why Africa? You've been on a safari or the Serengeti or something? What inspired Africa? And he said, well, actually, it's an acronym. And it stands for another freaking race boat I can't afford. So I kind of enjoy things like that. And then one last little story. This is about 10 years ago now, but there was a fellow in South County, about 20 miles south of Annapolis. And at the time, he was 88 years old. He's since passed. And he had a party one night. It's winter and cold out and blowing hard. And he had a party to celebrate that he was retired from yacht racing. Okay, well, there's a lot of reasons. And at 88, that's fair enough, sir. So we went down to the party, and like I said, it was cold out, but he had a big fireplace and the fire's going. And I noticed on the fireplace, this guy had a brick of metal. And I'm looking at this brick of metal, and it had some engraving on it. And in closer inspection, the engraving said, Yacht Racing, 1948-2012. He had taken every trophy he'd won in his life, melted it down, and put it on the fireplace, telling you just how important those trophies are. The guy was absolutely my hero. Yacht Racing.
It's great stuff.
So it's kind of fun.
Oh, I love it.
All right, I'm going to tell one more story.
All right.
I'm going to do 3, but I'm going to tell one more, and then we're going to look at some pictures. So this came to me the other day. I was watching some of the NBA finals, which has been great, or playoffs, which are great fun. And when I grew up in Toms River, New Jersey, on Barnegat Bay on the Jersey Shore, I followed all the New York sports teams, and I was a New York Knicks fan. I played basketball. Believe it or not, I played on my college basketball team. And I laugh about it now because I got in every time we were up by 20 points or down by 20 points. I got in. Other than that, I was at the front row on the bench watching it. Although I do joke I was the only All-American on the basketball team. Of course, I was an All-American sailing, not in basketball. So the year is 1970. And the New York Knicks are playing in the NBA Finals. They were up 3-1, and Your star center, Willis Reed, got hurt. He missed 2 games, and it's now 3-3. And the final game is at Madison Square Garden. And Madison Square Garden had a policy at the time. Now, keep in mind, this is the Vietnam era, that if you showed up wearing a uniform at a back door, they could maybe find you a nosebleed seat up in the rafters. And my father always advised me, make sure you give that usher a tip when he gets you a seat. And I would give the guy, crusty old fellow, I'm sure he's at least 52. That's old now, but it seemed old at the time. I would give him $2, maybe $3. And it was very cool.
Yeah.
So here I am at Game 7 of the NBA Finals. There's about 40 guys in uniform, sailors, soldiers, all waiting for the door to open up. The crusty old usher comes out and says, gentlemen, we are totally sold out tonight. And I suggest you get yourself to a pub to watch the game because we don't have any room. And you can imagine the collective groan. Everybody's walking off, feeling disappointed. I felt a tug on my elbow, and the usher says to me, son, I have a seat for you. He remembered the tip. Wait here. So I waited a long time, 20 minutes or so, and finally the door opens up. I thought he was never coming back. He said, I found you a seat. And he sits me behind the bench of the New York Knicks. It was unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
And I sat next to an actor, Dustin Hoffman, short guy. And he was friendly. And the Knicks won, very exciting. And the game ends, and somehow Dustin Hoffman and I get swept up with the team, and we go running with them right into the locker room. Now, on this weekend, it's the Mid-Atlantic Intercollegiate Championship, and the top 2 teams are going to go to the Nationals. So I really wanted to go, and I'm a freshman, but I got to sail A division. I was so inspired by those Knicks. I think I won 11 out of 16 races that weekend and easily qualified for the Nationals, and it was quite a thrill. I did get all their autographs, all the Knicks autographs on a box score chart, including Dustin Hoffman, and it's a great keepsake to this day. But my story doesn't end there. There's a part 2 of the story. 31 years later, I'm laying in a hospital bed at the University of Maryland Medical System, going through a bone marrow transplant for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I will tell you, it was debilitating. I could barely walk. I was incredibly depressed. I was down to 148 pounds. I weigh about 202 now. I just can't get under 200, but I'm about 202, 203. And I'm 6'2". And, I'm feeling bad. And this nurse comes in, Mr. Jobson, you can't be laying around like this. We got to get you sitting up. She opens the blinds to the windows and she turns the television on. Let's see if there's something on television. So she starts channel surfing. And I said, whoa, ma'am, stop right there. Go back to that channel. And there on the television was Game 7 of the 1970 NBA Finals, was on television, ESPN Classic. Holy cow, stop right there. I watched the game. I forgot about being sick and having this disease. And the Knicks won again. And after the game, they go down into the locker room. And there's Howard Cosell interviewing the players, Willis Reed and Bill Bradley and Dave DeBusschere and Walt Frazier. And there I am. I had short brown hair, not so much now. Duncan, I think you can relate. And anyway, I remembered how inspired I was to win that regatta. And after watching that game, I resolved at that time that this disease is not going to take me down. I got to talk to a bunch of Schooner aficionados 21 years from now. So that was in November of 2003. And that was the moment. And it's just funny sometimes how something that happens early in your life, you don't realize how that might become inspiring in a way that you don't really expect some years later. All right, with that, if we could go to the first video, and it's about 1.5 minutes, and I'm going to talk, and then Duncan, if we can stop after the first video.
Be more than happy to. Here we go.
1:25. Hang in, everybody. So anyway, here's a lot of international classes. And this is my boat that I sailed, the Hood 32. That's off Annapolis. You can see the Chesapeake Bay Bridge there. And I've got it souped up with a electric motor. It's got an asymmetrical spinnaker, and it's good for 2 or 3 people unless you take your grandkids. I've been racing Courageous a lot since 2015. That's with Art Santry, our helmsman. I'm the tactician, Robbie Doyle and John Wright, both America's Cup. That's with Ted Turner on American Eagle. A couple summers ago, we won the Opera House Cup on Weatherly. This is Antigua Classic Race Week on Eros. I've done 3 Bermuda races. Lately, I've been coaching with the Naval Academy, Silent Maid. This is a boat that I owned for a while. ACATS in Barnegat Bay. Harbor 20s on New Year's, out on Nantucket. You get the gist. Yes, I still sail, even squeeze myself into a sunfish or a laser. Now, I like this little picture here. This is a protest from New Yorker magazine in 1934. And this artist, a Yaley, made fun of everybody arguing. And that's what it looks like when I commentate the Olympics, which I'll be doing starting July 28th, 2 television screens and all my notes all over the place. So the answer is yes, I still sail. All right, if we can stop there. And I'm going to talk a little bit. All right. Our technology is good. Thank you, Duncan. I really appreciate it. All right, so I'm going to talk just briefly about the America's Cup and then some pictures. So the America's Cup, the 37th defense of the America's Cup, is taking place in Barcelona, Spain in late August, and the Cup final starts on October 12th. And it's European time, so the races, I believe, are going to start at 2 in the afternoon. So it'll be on at 8 here in the morning. There are 5 challengers from around the world and 1 defender. Emirates Team New Zealand is the defender. And then there's teams from Great Britain, from Italy, from Switzerland, from France, and the United States. I'm not working for anybody, and I'm biased. I want the Americans to win. And American Magic, they did not have a good run. In the trials last time, they had 0 wins and 8 losses. That's not good. But I think they're going to be a lot better this time around. So we will see. Now, there's a couple cool things about these boats. They're 75 feet long on the waterline, 75 feet on the waterline. And they have foils, and they go on the foils, and they're really fast. They can go 49 or 50 knots upwind, almost 4 times the speed of the wind. Just think about that, up on the foils. And the races will take maybe 20 to 25 minutes. They're short, a lot happens, and there are 8 crew on the boat. 4 crew sail the boat, and 4 crew bicycle pedals, powering up the hydraulics so that they can operate the foils and trim the sails and keep power for all the electronics. And then the other 4, one is called a flight controller. Sounds more like an aircraft pilot. One trims the sails. And then there's 2 people that alternate tactics and steering. You don't change sides if you're the helmsman. So there'll be a starboard helmsman and a port helmsman. They don't go back and forth. So if I'm the starboard helmsman, the port helmsman is my tactician. Then when we're on the port tacker jibe, I become his tactician. So there's this trade-off and dynamic going on. The foils are fascinating. So just a brief thing about foils. The longer the foil, the easier it is to get up and on a plane and foil. But the longer the foil, the more resistance that you have and the boat goes slower. Now, Barcelona is kind of a wavy place. I've sailed there a bunch of times, and waves are going to have a big role. So longer foil, easier to get up and stay on the foil. Shorter foil, harder to get up, but you go faster. So the designers have to figure out how long this foil is. Every team had a 40-footer, 40 foot of these monohulls. And you were allowed to test 4 different foil designs on your 40-footer. You select your best design of the 4, scale it up to the 75-footer, And that's the only foil you get, one on either side. I think you're allowed to have a spare. So that's a big bet by the design team because you can't change once you start racing. Now, the wind is strong in the summer in Barcelona. They, like a lot of cities, the hot air goes up from the city center, metropolitan area, and the cooler breeze from the Mediterranean Sea comes in and cools it off. Hence, a thermal draft or a sea breeze. But as the summer fades into September and October, the land is not as hot and the breeze gets less. So the challengers, you're probably going to have to win early in the early rounds in more wind and lesser wind during the cup. And then finally, the trials are a fascinating format. So about 12 days after the end of the Olympic Games, there's something called a preliminary regatta. New Zealand gets to race in that regatta, which I'm not sure is the right thing to do, but they do. And there's 6 teams, so everybody races each other's twice. So that's 10 races, 2 per team. And it doesn't count for a darn thing. Then they do it all over again and have a double round robin, and everybody races each other twice. At that point, New Zealand drops away because they're in the cup already. And of the 5 challengers, 1 team is out after the double round robin. Whoever is the top seed will select which of the other 3 they want to race against. So you imagine that decision? And then there's the semifinal, and the semifinal is the first team to win 5 races will advance to the final. So that's pretty quick. A double round robin, 1 team is out, a semifinal, win 5 races, you're in, 2 more teams are out. And keep in mind, these budgets are 150 million at least each, $150 million. Then the 2 finalists will have a series, and the first boat to win 7 races advances to the cup against Team New Zealand. So that's a little preview. So having said that, if we can run the video, I've got some pictures of what we're going to see.
You bet.
And I'll just talk my way through it here. And then we're going to shift gears to some cruising and classic yachts after this.
You got that?
We went ahead a little bit, but it's okay. It's okay. So American Magic, they had lost the 3 races in a row, but they finally got ahead. They were something like 43 boat lengths ahead of the Italians. And Dean Barker, the helmsman, got a little distracted, or Terry Hutchin, the tactician. But as they rounded the windward mark, they got a puff of wind that really was unsettling. So here they are coming into the windward mark. I'll get an aerial here for you in just a second. You can see the foil come up. That's the Italian boat, Jimmy Spithill, who you remember won the cup. So here comes American Magic around the windward mark. Notice how wide they're turning through the gate. And right there, they got a puff of wind, 23 knots, and the boat literally took off, launched. And it went from about 36 knots to dead stop and capsized. Of course, the coach boat, a little upset by this eventuality, and over they went. All the chase boats of the other teams went over to assist. They didn't want it to sink, and it did not. But as you can imagine, it fried the electronics, it fried the all the hydraulics. So anyway, kind of a sad thing. So here's a little review of the 36th America's Cup that took place in Auckland, New Zealand. And this is race 9. At this point, Team New Zealand is up 5-3, and this is the 9th race. And this was kind of a critical race. You had to win 7 to win the America's Cup. The 2 boats come off the starting line, all the crew down low. NZL on the left, a little bit more speed than the Italians on the right. And this was a critical race here. Going upwind, the Italians on the right looking pretty good, just keeping off the foil, and they got to the windward mark. As you can see, they're 8 meters apart, pretty much dead even. And the Kiwis had to dip behind Prada, but they both round the windward mark dead even, heading downwind. Look at that thing take off. Impressive. Wide turns. Of course, you got to stay inside those boundary lines. And the Kiwis ended up winning it 7 races to 3. Here's the last race. So they're not 6-3. Sorry, at this point, they're 6-3. This is race 10. One more chance for the Italians. They get a better start, as you can see here, forced the New Zealanders away. But New Zealand just sailed a little bit faster than the Italians and ended up defending the cup 7 races to 3. Of course, that was joyous there in Auckland. Peter Burling, the skipper, happy to hold the America's Cup. And then they've decided to take the cup not to Auckland, but on to Barcelona, Spain, which is coming up later this summer. So as I mentioned, they've been racing 40-footers. And the race course that is Barcelona. So that church has been under construction for 500 years. They say it's going to finish soon. Beautiful place. I've raced there a bunch of times. Here's the competing teams. Emirates Team New Zealand is the defender. Olingi Red Bull Racing, that's the Swiss. Luna Rosa Prada Pirelli, that's the mouthful from Italy. Ineos Britannia, American Magic, and Orient Express, interesting name for the French. And all the boats are in the water in Barcelona, except for New Zealand, who I think they shipped their boat by air today. They had 2 preliminary regattas, one in Spain and one in, believe it or not, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia last fall. And US won the regatta in Villanova, Spain, but did not do as well in Saudi Arabia. A little bit lumpy there. Now, these are the 40-foot versions, the test boats that they use for ramping up to the 40-footers. And they only race with 4 people in these boats. A lot different than the 12 meters that I used to sail. And that these were not match races, by the way, they were fleet racing. And as you can see, one little mistake and you come off the foil, and that's the end of that. That's what Rosa found. Here's a little view from their bowsprit looking aft. Ouch. And the cockpit filling up with water. And New Zealand ended up winning that regatta. So maybe they're going to be the defender. I don't know. We'll see. Now, there's a couple other cool things that are going to take place this summer in Barcelona. There's going to be well, let me show you the start first, and then I'll go on to other things. Here's the race course. Windward lewards. The legs are about 1.8 miles in length. The races, as I said, take 20 to 25 minutes. They won't race if the wind is under 6.5 knots, and they won't race if the wind is over 21.0. So that's only a 14.5 knot range for sailing, which I think is kind of limited. All right, now let's go on to some of these boats. There's a Youth America's Cup in the 40-footers, and there's a Women's America's Cup in the 40-footers. The New York Yacht Club team has been practicing in Narragansett Bay. And I hope they do well. We'll see. But it'll be a great fun having the youth team and the women's team. And I'm sure some of these sailors will end up doing the America's Cup as well. Lots of technology in these boats, and you got to be a true athlete to be able to do them. And not only is there a Youth America's Cup and the America's Cup and a Women's America's Cup, but also a little throwback to the J-boats. Thomas Edison in 1903, filming Reliance, his newfangled motion picture camera, pretty cool. Reliance had 63 crew, by the way. It's a lot of sandwiches every day. But the purpose of all the crew was to give it stability on the windward side. So they got everybody right up on the windward rail. And then in the 1930s, we advanced to the J-boats. 1937.
In her 4th and final victory, Mike Vanderbilt's giant sloop breezes over the finish line to keep the America's Cup in America. Skipper Vanderbilt is rightfully proud of his crew's victory, but pays high tribute to his rival.
Mr. Sopwith has proved himself a most gracious loser. It is easy to be a good winner, but in defeat lies the true test of sportsmanship.
So the reason I show the J-boats is that 6 J-boats are going to race in Barcelona in between the America's Cup trials this summer. And I'm willing to predict they steal the show. These are boats that are 120 feet long with a 165-foot mast, 33-foot crew. Quite a challenge to race them, and they're going to be fleet racing. And look at that. So to me, if I were the czar of the America's Cup, I would put them in J-boats, stripped out racing machines that are big, lots of crew, spinnakers, and real sailboats. Less electronics, more sailing. So anyway, there's 6 of them. That was taken to Newport, Rhode Island. They were all nervous about getting under the bridge. All right, so that's a little preview of the America's Cup. Continuing on. So let me just preface this. We can stop right here for a second.
Absolutely.
So as I mentioned, I like doing cruising, and I've done plenty of it in Maine and in the Mediterranean and the Caribbean. But I've also done some adventure cruises. I've been around Cape Horn 3 times. I have been to Antarctica twice, and I've been up to Spitsbergen, Svalbard once. And these cruises, I try to make them for a purpose, and my purpose is always to make a documentary. And one of the trips that I did was to an island off Nova Scotia called Sable Island. And I made a film. It's on my website, jobsonsailing.com. You're welcome to do it. There's no charge. It's there. But here's a little short segment from Sable Island. And if we can run this, Duncan, and I'll just talk my way through it. So Sable Island is a body of sand out in the Atlantic Ocean. It's populated by about 500 horses. They live there year round, introduced in the early 1800s. And the only thing that's there is sand and grass. In the summer, about 500,000 seals populate the island. The Ipswich sparrow breeds on the island. And the hills are anywhere from 80 to 100 feet high. It's 23 miles long, it's crescent shaped, and there it is off the coast. That's it. So it took me a year to get permission from the Canadian government to actually go land on the island, and we stayed in a couple of their very rustic cottages there for a few days with my film crew and a couple archaeologists. We left the Royal Nova Scotia, yacht squadron on a Sabre 36-footer. We wanted a relatively small boat so we could get into the shallow water. And there were 6 of us on the crew, a couple sailors, a cameraman, and a couple of PhD archaeologists. Of course, the wind was right out of the east-southeast, so it was upwind all the way to Sable Island. I grew a beard for my expedition. I invited this albatross to join us. He had spent a couple hours. He was tired. Then he finally took off. And after 2 days, we finally arrived at Sable Island, and we were very lucky with good weather when we got there. We were the only American yacht able to land, put the anchor light out. We had 2 small dinghies to go ashore. When we got to shore, the Canadian Parks Rangers met us there. We did keep 1 person on the boat all the time, 2 people at night, 1 person during the day in case something happened. And we walked everywhere, walking in the sand. And our boat looked a little lonely out there. Right after World War II, the Canadians built a village, and this island is constantly changing shape with every tide, every new wind. And of course, storms do a lot of damage, but things grow. We were curious about the seals, and they were curious about us. We were told not to touch the wildlife, which of course we didn't. Hey, buddy, what's up? We got a little spooked by our cameraman. In the summer, they stay close to shore because there's a lot of sharks around the island, and they're well aware of that. So they stick together in groups, and anytime one of them strays, it's a little bit dangerous for them. The horses were curious about us. We didn't touch them. They're not a big horse. There is fresh water on the island, as you can see with this pond there. And the horses know how to dig the sand and eat the grass. They don't eat the roots. And the sand is tough on their teeth. That's what does them in, is the sand, and they lose their teeth after a while. The horses live in family groups. Kind of beautiful, really, living in the wild. First year horses were introduced to Sable Island was in 1801. I should add that Sable, by the way, is a French word that means sand. Very appropriate for this place, Sable, sand. There's a young horse growing up. His mother. So this is Main Station. It was pretty rustic inside those cabins. There were a couple meteorologists there, and there were 4 young women from a university on the mainland that spent the summer there studying the genetics of horse tongue. Sounds like something interesting to study. And the park rangers showed us where there are houses that had been there that are all now buried in the sand. The sand covers everything. And there's also several hundred shipwrecks around this island. Our archaeologists were fascinated by the things they found. They took pictures. We didn't touch anything. We didn't take anything. And we were told just leave it there. And they sure got excited about pieces of glass and things that were a couple years old, and some things were hundreds of years old. And all of it's still there. Things that wash up, like this mooring ball. Who knows where it came from? These guys estimated it was 150 years old. This was a Greek freighter that had shipwrecked during World War II, just rotting away. The Andrea Gale, which you'll remember from the Perfect Storm, foundered not far from Sable Island. And the Titanic sent radio signals to New York by the Marconi wireless on Sable Island. Kind of interesting. So the word got back to New York that Titanic had sunk and some were rescued on Carpathia, I think the name was. All these ships are still there, but covered with sand. And it's amazing how the sand takes over. And this is a little legend of known shipwrecks since 1583. Just imagine, no GPS, no radar. This is the foggiest part in Canada. I think in 1991, the last boat that ran aground was a J41, and it too was quickly swallowed up by the sand. And when we got there some years later, that was the remnants, a bulkhead and a shroud sticking up out of sand. And notice how far the shoreline had moved over those years. So it's hard to know how long Sable Island will last. There were other islands that have disappeared over the years. And don't think about me walking around. Think of the cameraman that had to film all of this. This is a place called Bald Dune, and you can see on both sides. And the reason it's foggy is that you have the Labrador Current to the north, and you have the Gulf Stream to the south. So the confluence of the cold water and the warm water creates all the fog. But as you can see, when we were there, we were very lucky to have some nice clear days. Hey, off my beach, buddy. I don't know if Sable Island will last very long with global climate change and the rising seas, but right now it's a place to be studied and appreciated. I mean, that's my little trailer for the magic and mystery of Sable Island. Thanks for hanging there, everybody. Yeah. I got three short videos, a little shorter than what we've seen. One on Harrishoff and his legacy, and a little humorous stuff that I've collected over the years, and then a high energy video to wrap up here. And we got a commercial here.
It's a 127-mile overnight race from Annapolis, Maryland to Norfolk, Virginia. It's a celebration of a race to market from an age that has passed into history, a time when the Chesapeake Bay hosted passenger steamers and was peppered with working boats and pleasure craft, all under sail. This is an invitation to take part in a celebration, An invitation to get out on the bay, strut your stuff, spend time with friends, and put some wind in the sails of your beautiful boat. This is an invitation to join the Great Chesapeake Bay Schooner Race. After more than 35 years, the Schooner Race has decided to add an invitational class for non-schooner boats that would like to join us in the fun. Now, whether you have a schooner or classic vessel that harkens back to that age of sail, we're inviting you to join us. This race runs the length of the bay, and participants encounter all sorts of different conditions. It's challenging, and it's a great deal of fun. From the parade of sail in Baltimore's Inner Harbor, to the crack of the starting cannon off Annapolis, to the early morning finish at Thimble Shoal Light at the mouth of Hampton Roads, this is a race designed to celebrate your rig, whether classic yawl, ketch, sloop, workboat, or schooner. It's a chance to test your skills and enjoy the camaraderie of new friends and old. It's a chance to be part of something big and something meaningful. As an invitational class, the criteria are simple. If you have a vessel, modern or not, which is reminiscent of the age of schooners, you are welcome to join us. In addition, if you or your organization have a mission compatible with ours, promoting awareness of the Chesapeake Bay's heritage and ecology, and or preserving these historic vessels, you'd be welcome to join us too. Applications will be considered by our race committee, and if they feel that your boat or organization would fit our parameters, you're in for a wonderful experience. Join us. Let's get your boat on the line. Or if you know of anyone else who might fit our criteria, send this over to them. Let's keep this great event alive, and let's give back to those who live along our shores. Join us for the Great Chesapeake Bay Schooner Race. It's a ride to remember. To find out more about the race and our mission of supporting not-for-profit organizations on and around the Bay, please visit us at gcbsr.org.
Life is good, life is good, yeah. Life is good, life is good, yeah. Yeah, in my darkest times, you got me feeling like I've been walking on air. Left all my worries and cares. I've got no burdens around you. I don't care who knows I love you. 'Cause I've been so lost without you. And in my darkest times, you got me feeling like
That was nice.
Right, and there you are.
Everybody looked pretty happy there, Duncan, in those pictures. Yeah, we had
Well,
a
I
good
try
time.
to take the happy pictures. Let's see if we can get back to where we were, Gary. Hang on just a second here. And I'll get everybody lined up.
All right, well, while you're doing that, let me just introduce this. So 2 summers ago, we got lucky. I got word that there were going to be Harrishaw 30s, Harrishaw 40s, and a Harrishaw 50, all in the early 1900s, would be in Newport, Rhode Island at the same time. So I got a camera crew and did some interviews and made a film. And this is a very short, about, well, let's see, 3-minute version of it, Harrishaw, the enduring legacy of the Harrishaw yachts. So here we go.
It's said that a classic wooden boat has a spirit. It's alive, whether resting on their mooring or fighting their way to weather. Up and down the New England coast, wooden boats are stalwarts of the past, evoking a sense of nostalgia, craftsmanship, and pride. While many fine wooden yachts have been born in the shipyards of the Northeast, few can rival the mystique of a Harrishoff designed and built craft.
They were remarkable boats for their era.
They're absolutely magnificent yachts.
His boats are fast, his boats are able, they last a long time.
On a memorable summer evening in June at Harbor Court in Newport, Rhode Island, 3 historic Harrisoff yachts rendezvous for the New York Yacht Club's One Design celebration. The event is part of the Harrisoff Golden Jubilee, the 50th anniversary of the Harrisoff Marine Museum in Bristol, Rhode Island.
Over the winter of 1904 into 1905, the first class of New York 30s was constructed at HMCO in Bristol.
In 1904, the New York Yacht Club commissioned Harrisoff to design and build a fleet of 18 New York 30s. This was the waterline measurement. The yachts were about 46 feet in overall length. The concept of one design racing was new. The yachts were affordable for larger numbers of sailors. Harrisoff built a fleet of 9 New York 50s in 1913 and a fleet of 14 New York 40s in 1916. Since that time, there have been 9 New York Yacht Club One Design classes. The most recent is the IC-37s, which made their racing debut in 2019.
Boats would be built all exactly alike and then drawn by lot. And that is something which was done also with other Harrisoff One Design classes. An owner did not know which boat was built for him. With the New York 30s, of course, that resulted in what later has been called the greatest One Design class of all times, because the racing was so hard.
The average lifespan for wooden boats is about 30 years without major interventions. We think that today around 28% of the original output of somewhere around 2,000 boats still survives, which is, on the one hand, doesn't sound like a lot, but on the other hand, that's a lot for a bunch of wooden boats.
It's a testament to Nathaniel Green Harrisoff and the Harrisoff Manufacturing Company that so many of his original yachts are still sailing or are in the process of restoration more than 100 years after their original build. Graceful lines, strong but lightweight construction, and speed through the water are the characteristics of a Harrisoff designed and built yacht that were a winning combination then and still are today.
I think you'd have to imagine that he would be smiling and he would have a huge satisfaction and maybe surprised, because these boats were very lightly built and I don't think he necessarily expected them to be sailing 100 years later.
People value them so much to keep them for more than 100 years and keep them sailing.
These old boats have a spirit. There's a sentimentality and a feeling of stewardship.
I don't subscribe to the idea that people are only excited by speed. I think they're just as excited by a combination of speed and beauty. And it's hard to surpass the beauty of classic boats racing.
All right, well, I hope you enjoy that. We'll keep rolling along into the next little feature. It's about a 2-minute piece. And what this is a group of slides that I've had in my slideshows over the years. There's the J boats in Newport, the first time in 52 years. All the crew crowded up there on the rail, 33 of us. I always like riding a rail. Conversations seem good up there, like the Bahamian work boats. I feel sorry for the guy all the way on the right. A funny way to kind of hike out upside down on a trapeze wire. Or how about the log canoes over in St. Michael's and Tread Avon? That doesn't look right. Ultimate 30s. And that's not right either. That's supposed to look like that going up the mast on the bosun's chair. This is a Russian tall ship. And I don't think it's very comfortable. Imagine being up in a berth in the bow, because what goes up has to come down. Sea conditions, rough. That's the tactician. I don't know how the tactician falls overboard. And notice the helmsman's in the water and the crew doesn't even know. Guy still got his cowboy hat on. Nice. And you know why they're climbing the rig? They've run aground. Jameson on the rocks. Whoops, not so good. Yep, that's Prince Philip there at the helm. And they hit the mark. I think he hit the mark in the Melgus 24. They ran over the mark. Notice no crew is actually looking. Well, they're pushing off. Probably not so good. This is bad. It got all tangled in the rudder. Wouldn't be there against the bay buoy. And I'm glad I'm not the head of the protest committee trying to sort out this mess. Boat I found in Hawaii, the Love Boat. Which way did you say the mark was? Port or starboard? That's Nantucket, not a good look. Another not so good look. And Popeye, he accompanied me in a lot of my slideshows over the years. Anyway, those are some of my funds. All right, we're going to continue on here with a little look at the National Sailing Hall of Fame, which we opened exactly 2 years ago, May 22, 2022. And if you get to Newport, we invite you to come take a look. And here's some shots from my collection that I've put together over the years. And Duncan, you can pull the volume up. We can listen to it. Well, that's plenty of action there. I hope you enjoyed that collection of videos. There's a lot of years of shooting stuff, but all in high definition and cut to pictures is great fun.
That was great, Gary. Thank you so much. Hey, you just finished a presentation of a new movie at the Annapolis Film Fest. You want to tell us about that a little bit?
Oh, thank you. So Unfurling the World, the Voyages of Irving and Electa Johnson, I showed at the Annapolis Film Festival last month, and it was fun for me to see it on a big screen with big sound. But it's a story about this amazing couple that did 7 trips around the world between 1933 and 1959 in 2 different vessels, both of them topsail schooner type vessels. And they would take young people, about 20 kids, 20 to 24 kids, between the ages of 16 and 24 on 18-month trips around the world. And these families funded their kids. And can you imagine the first trip in 1933, Irving was 28 and his new wife was 25, and families entrusted them no email. No, they would put letters in the mail every time they got to some place where there was a letter box or a post office. And they had the good sense to have a cameraman with them on all 7 trips. And all of this footage was just sitting at Mystic Seaport. And I got commissioned by Mystic to put together a film. So I had to take old 8mm and 16mm film clips with no sound, figure out what it was, and put it together. And as part of it, I interviewed 7 of the kids who are all now in their 70s and 80s, and it was great fun. So anyway, thank you. Unfurling the World, you could get it. Mystic Seaport has it if you want to watch it. So
Yeah.
Mystic Seaport Museum, or Unfurling the World, the Voyages of Irving and Electa Johnson.
Yeah, they were an amazing couple, and they started a lot of these training voyages that we still have going on, including Picton Castle as we speak. Well, Gary, we've got a couple of comments here. Why don't we take a quick look at them? And if you've got your chat open, you'll be able to take a look up and down there. And we're starting to run over time, so let's just take a quick look here. I have in the Q&A, will we ever see 40-foot foiling boats for recreational boat owners? With AI and computing power increases, will captains be able to push a button to do the technical work?
I hope not. Oh, I like sailing more than that. Look, these America's Cup boats, who knows where they're going, but technology's always been part of the Cup. But if I were the czar of the America's Cup, it would look different.
Yeah.
First of all, to answer the question, yes, there's increasing amounts of foiling. They're very difficult boats. They're getting better in the waves, and I'm sure we'll see more of it in the future. And 5 of our Olympic classes have foiling going on. So surely we're going to see a little bit more of them. If I were the czar of the America's Cup, let me tell you what it would look like. It would be different. I would have a 100-foot boat, big, you want to see it. I'd have limited crew, maybe 16 or 18 crew aboard the boat. And they'd be stripped out racing machines that would go fast. In other words, a sailboat with spinnakers. No canting keel, no water ballast, and no foiling. So we have a real match race. I'd insist that only Americans are on the American boat, and only the French are on the French boat, and the Italians are on the Italian boat. So it becomes a national competition, just like we have in the Olympic Games. I'd have a boat where the owner can sail on it. You know, it seems to me these people put in gigantic sums and then they can't even sail on it. Thomas Lipton, Thomas Sopwith, Ted Turner, they all sailed on their own boats. Harold Vanderbilt. And it seems to me the owners should be able to sail on their boats. And I would have longer courses, a lot less electronics, so that the sailor decides when to tack and how far you are from the starting line, so it becomes more of a judgment. But at the rate we're going, we might as well just have a computer game. So, those are my editorial comments of the evening.
Good editorial. Hey, Charles Ward has asked, how disappointing is it not to have a Laser 7 sailor from the USA in the Olympics?
Extremely disappointing. So the way the Olympics are set up these days is you have to qualify your country to get into the Olympic Games. And we, the USA, not me personally, but the USA, were able to qualify sailors in 9 of the 10 classes. And the one class we were unable to qualify was what's now called the ILCA 6. ILCA stands for International Laser Class. We used to know it as the laser, but there was some kind of legal dispute with the builder and manufacturer and designer. And anyway, the boat's the ILCA 7. The ILCA 6 has got a little smaller sail area, and that's the women. So the United States did not qualify. And there's 45 lasers in the Olympics, and I think it's extremely disappointing that we don't have a sailor in the laser because there's so much laser sailing in this country.
I think you got a point there.
Thank you,
Okay.
Charles.
Thank you very much for your time. We've run over, and I'm awfully glad we did.
Okay. Well, Duncan, thanks for hosting me, and I hope I see lots of people in the water. It's going to be a busy year, and if you're in Annapolis and you see me out whirlwind, wave hello.
Absolutely, and I want to also thank you for participating so fully in the Annapolis community. Thank you, my friend.
All right, good night.
Good night, everybody. This will be available probably in a couple days, and we will see you all at that time. Thank you for your time, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the bay. Take care.